Okay. I told y'all this was gonna happen. I'm gonna be honest, like,
the ghetto!
we are so we are so. What's up, guys? Welcome to the breakdown where we talk about everything cars, news, and reviews. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. And I cannot go a second further without thanking each and every one of my subscribers who has been a part of this journey. Everybody who's watched a video, you guys are freaking awesome. The breakdown has hit 105 subscribers and it's absolutely astounding at the overwhelming support that you guys have given me. So before I even start, man, y'all look.
I see you. We good. Okay. We good. I see. We see each other. We good.
In today's episode, we are going to be exploring the automotive market and why we are in such deep shit after reviewing the Experian report. So with that being said, stick around and stay tuned because we are now watching the breakdown. Not we, because I'm here, not we. Okay, anyway, you're watching the breakdown. As always, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing to the channel. And again, consider subscribe to the channel. It means a lot to me, more so than the YouTube algorithm, but the YouTube algorithm does determine what you like and what you tend to watch based on if you like it or not. So these are actionable items that I strongly encourage you to consider, but more importantly, digest this information. This is so big and so important. The reason this channel was started was to help people buy cars properly, as they are keys to getting and attaining wealth. So with that being said, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It means a lot to me, more so than the YouTube algorithm. And also it does let me know that you guys enjoy this kind of content. This video has been brought to you by FICO, which is the Fair Isaac Company. The Fair Isaac Company, or FICO as we know it, is the top tier credit displayer, detailer, whatever you want to call it. Pretty much they give you the accurate credit score that you need before even applying for any type of automotive loan or any type of loan for that matter. And you get an accurate score without the embarrassment of the rejection. Click on the link in the description below for further details. And without further ado, we can go into the show. If you're new to the channel, you probably are trying to figure out if I do more car reviews, more news, whatever.
Well, I think it doesn't matter.
What does matter is that I give you accurate information to help you make the best decision possible for your next automotive purchase. Experian, which is one of the three credit bureaus, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian all together, they release reports every quarter about the market and trends of what's going on with this. And cars for the last 2 years since the pandemic have been absolutely crazy. It's kind of wild that we still are paying over $700 on average for a car note. I don't know why the fuck we're doing that, but whatever. I'm going to read the report. I'm going to give you some detailed analysis and what I think and how I feel about it, but you should be able to deduce what you need to know after watching this video. In the first slide, one of the key takeaways was that from 2020 to 2022, the average financing for a new car percentage dropped almost 8 points from 89.3% to 81.98% as new, but the used car market stayed steady at 40%. 40% of people that were financing back in 2020 were financing in 2022. Of those cars that were financed, 51% of them were 0 to 3 years old. You know anything about me and my disposition about cars, it is buy a car that is newer with higher miles, since you buy an older car with lower miles is a setup for failure. I've been there, I've done that. What's interesting about this chart is that even though people finance the cars from new to 3 years old at 51%, almost 42% of people finance the car anywhere from 4 to 12 years old. That's a problem. As the car ages, you begin to create more liabilities. That is more likelihood for repairs. In most cases, for most cars, repairs start to hit anywhere between 5 and 10 years is where you can expect to do a ton of major work. Compound that onto you actually financing the car in addition to insurance, and it's a fucking recipe for disaster. From 2020 to 2022, more people were financing used cars than they were new. A stronger percentage of leases were dropping as 2022 from 2020. And the reason why that partially is because the pandemic occurred in the earlier part of the year. So those are some numbers that are bringing it up, but the numbers dropped a little bit over 2022. And what most people tend to look at when they think about leasing versus finance, they usually look at it from a single perspective of my car note is about the same as a lease and I'm getting more benefit. No, you're not.
Silly rabbit.
it costs more money, and I promise it does. Another key takeaway from this presentation is that in Experian data, 27% of people in 2020 were leasing cars, whereas 18% of people were leasing cars in 2022. People are looking at this from a perspective of the cost of cars are virtually the same, so there's no point of having the mileage restrictions to a lease because a lease is typically supposed to be cheaper than financing the car. The problem is the depreciation factor, as well as the insurance costs that people aren't accounting for, as well as the repair costs that people aren't accounting for, does make a huge difference in your overall cost. So a big problem that I see in this report that's concerning is the deep subprime people. Now 96% of them are opting for used cars because they know that's the only car that they can get as opposed to a brand new car because it's super expensive. The near prime, 76% of them are financing used cars, and used cars, remind you, in 2021 and 2020 were overpriced, and there are more and more people opting for used cars because they're almost forced to get these used cars because new cars, even with the chip shortage and the delay and the manufacturing processes, cuts in production, everything is being hemmed up, so people are forced to buy used cars, and I'm starting to see that. In the super prime segment, there's only 46% of people in 2022 that got used cars, which means that a lot of them opted for new cars and probably have leases, or they have a opportunity to plan to get another car.
Damn!
Another issue is that the used car price continually goes up. For Q3, the price for the average loan term went up from 65 months to 68 months. The average loan amount went from $21,629 in 2020 to $28,506, which is a $7,000 increase. The overall loan amount financed. Not to mention the interest rate. The interest rate went up from 8.3% and to 9.3% on a used car with the values that are super inflated. This is a problem. There are more people starting to go to credit unions and increase membership, because if you don't know anything about credit unions, you do have to get a membership first, and in some cases you have to wait a certain period before you actually get an auto loan through them if you don't have the best credit, but you can still get one. The report also notes that there are more people starting to go from captive lenders, and people are still using banks in this day and age. I don't know why people still use banks, but whatever. The credit unions typically give you the best rate next to the captive lenders, but with the federal interest rate increasing once again to 3.75% as of November 2022, it has made it that much more difficult to borrow. And these are for new cars. This isn't even for used cars. Credit unions are beginning to see an increase in growth because people are trying to find ways to mitigate the interest rate. Now, according to the federal interest rate back in November 2nd, they increased the rate to 3.9% to borrow. The problem is that people are still waiting for new cars and values are continuing to drop. The other thing is because of the short supply, that does not mean that the dealer is necessarily coming off of their prices in the way that they should. The other thing is they still have to make money. So for the dealers, this is not exactly the most opportune time, but any time before a recession or right after recession is where the dealer typically makes their most money because of the economics behind it. According to Reuters, they identified that there was slow increase in wages, but at the rate at which things cost, it doesn't amount to the increase in wages. And unfortunately, wage stagnation has been the bigger enemy of our affordability in the last 15 years, particularly right after 2008.
With your broke ass.
Of the lease distribution, the leasing rates were dropping across the board, meaning that people were looking at it from a sense of, I mean, shit, why would I buy a car when I can just lease one? That's a terrible idea. And the reason is because you have to incur and factor in all comprehensively what factors go into car ownership. I'm going to tell you right now, car ownership is ghetto. I probably will never do it again. I will lease one, I will keep one for a year and trade it, but I'm never owning one until I get old. If the majority of leasees have a 741 credit score, that means everybody else is pretty much financing, and those cars are costing a ton of money in interest. So the banks are making a killing right now. Of the top 20 leased new makes, Honda remains at number 1, Chevrolet number 2, Toyota number 3. These were probably some of the heaviest hit throughout the crisis, and you know, the luxury cars are always going to be typically on the bottom because most people don't want to pay for cars and they're just expensive. BMW was kind of midway, Lexus was towards the bottom, Audi and Tesla were towards the bottom as well, but Honda, Chevrolet, Toyota, and Ford were at the top 4, and Jeep as well, because of course people want Jeeps. But Honda in particular is one of the more problematic issues here because they've cut a lot of their production and a lot of people have waited, and they've gotten so expensive overall to the point where a Civic costs $30,000. A Civic costs $30,000. Yes, I said that correctly. That's a problem. When we look at each make based on whether or not a consumer was financing or was leasing, it's pretty clear across the board that the bulk of people are taking out loans to finance these cars brand new, not necessarily used. But in terms of new, that also means that more people have taken out more money to borrow, which also means is that these cars are going to depreciate heavier as car values continue to drop. The average price for a new car in July of 2022 was $48,182, while the average used car was $28,219. According to CNBC, a used car costs as much as my 2013 Civic. That's when I bought it brand new. $48,000 is what I paid for a BMW X3, and that is brand new.
To grow a YouTube channel, start a business. When you tap
in total, these cars are getting out of hand. The problem is not now, not 3 months from now, not 6 months from now, a year from now, we will see a massive influx of inventory because a lot of people will either have defaulted on their loans, traded in, and now they have to increase their loan to value ratio, which means that they're going to put more money on the cars than they should, which is going to put them deeper underwater. Shouldn't have done, sorry. It's going to put them deeper underwater. And this is a mess because if the car industry fails, we are f***ed.
Can you just leave it by the door?
The other thing is that the demand for SUVs and trucks has increased tenfold, and essentially now we are in the 35,000 to 40,000 range because more and more people are starting to get SUVs. That includes the RAV4, the Chevy Equinox, Ford F-150 as a truck, as a pickup truck, and the CR-V, which is now considered unaffordable, which I'm still flabbergasted at the idea that that's unaffordable. Like you can get an Acura RDX for damn near the same price. When it comes to the top leased makes as well as the top leased models, they do correspond. The Chevy Equinox, the Ford F-150, Honda CR-V, Jeep Wrangler were all at the top of the list, and the payment difference increased by $133 with the Chevy Equinox. For a loan was $510, for a lease $375. An F-150 for a loan on average was $893. A Honda CR-V, which should be no more than a $400 a month car payment, is now $556. And I want to point out that the average loan terms went up to 72 months per loan. Think about that. According to Insurify.com, the insurance rates rose by 12% in 2021 and were projected to raise by 5% in 2022. This article was written in January of 2022, which means that in 2019, the annual insurance rates was $1,440, and they increased by 2022 to $1,707. What that means is that we are seeing significant increases in everything. The problem is that the values are dropping. That is the problem. It'd be different if everything was worth what we bought it for, but it's not. And what's going to happen is that a ton of people bought cars in 2020 and 2021, and there is a likelihood they are going to want to get out of those cars into 3 to 4 years, which means that the values on them are going to tank and they're going to be completely upside down, and this is going to have long-term ramifications. And don't even get me started on gap insurance. So in a 2020 report done by the Federal Reserve, essentially what was said was that of the people that did not purchase gap insurance, 63% of them bought new cars, whereas 58% of them bought used cars. as opposed to the 36% that did and the 41% that did. The problem with gap insurance and not buying it, if you have an accident and you are upside down on the loan, then what that says is that more than likely you are going to have to roll that loan over into the next payment. And of those loans that did not purchase gap insurance, 57% of them had loans greater than $10,000. And what that means is that a lot of them were going to be in the effing hole. I'm seeing so much wrong here, y'all. I just, whew. Mind you, this was for 2020. This was not for 2022. Once the year completes and we get another report for Q4, we'll have a final year tally up of what happened. But as of right now, this is looking pretty bad. So you're probably wondering how we got here. And the truth is we got here from a few different reasons. And this is really just the chickens coming home to roost. I know there's going to be people that are going to say it was because of the pandemic money, and that's partially true, but not entirely. The bigger component here is that cars have been overpriced for a decade and some change, not to mention wages have not kept up. And also, the decisions that were made during the pandemic ultimately affected us long term. What this means is, as a part of the middle class or upper echelon, you may be okay, but as a part of the lower middle class onward, cars are essentially unaffordable at this point and are going to pigeonhole us into two different categories, the haves and the have-nots. That's where we're headed. Unfortunately, the pandemic was one of those things that broke our fragile capitalistic system, and it's kind of to the point where we're going to have to make some tough decisions. If you can, go ahead and buy your car. Just go ahead. So to put into perspective, the deep subprime, and near prime segments for amounts financed was anywhere between $35,000 and $45,000, which is funny because the new prime amount finance was lower than all of them except the deep subprime, so it almost elbowed itself. But that means that the people with good credit, they didn't take on that risk because they're smart. The people with the baby.
I ain't never been mugged of my future.
These numbers are something else. So to put simply in these terms, these numbers are concerning as f. For those with decent credit, they took out $44,530, but what I find interesting is the ones with super prime, really good credit, took out the same amount comparably that the people with deep subprime took out. So put simply, those with 600 credit scores and below and those with 750 credit scores took out the same amount of money because they're smart. And what's going to end up happening is those people that have low amounts taken out, they're going to come out on top, and the ones in the deep subprime, and near prime sectors are going to overpay and are going to be in such deep come the next 24 months. And check this out. The person with a 600 credit score took out an average loan payment of $690 a month, whereas a person with the bomb-ass 850 credit score took out the same amount, but their car loan was $28 cheaper at $668 a month. And woo! Boy, the system got our asses good this time. Let me tell you. If you know anything about new cars, you know that they depreciate as soon as you drive off the lot, and people look at prices and values as the same thing, and prices and values are two completely different numbers, and they mean two completely different things. And what I'm seeing in this is that the deep subprime percentages as far as loan to value ratios have increased, and over the third quarter, oh gosh, this is bad. So to put into perspective, the thing is that if you see the numbers and you see super prime versus deep prime, you'll notice that the difference in LTV is comparable. The problem is that the deep subprime person is going to pay more in interest and overpay for that vehicle, and it's going to take them longer to build equity into that vehicle, as opposed to the super prime person will build equity into that vehicle relatively quickly. These numbers are crazy because we have the audacity to pay 12.93, 10.11, and 7.25% on average for these $45,000 cars that we are only making on average in median salary $51,000 for. And anybody who understands numbers understands that this is wild. So you're probably wondering, what in the am I supposed to do? If you are planning on buying a new car, in the time that you order your car, because there's a strong possibility you're gonna have to wait for it, get your credit right. And you do that by checking your FICO score. I have a video on how to do that and what to check for. Go check that out because it does explain everything you need to know. Another thing that you should consider is, can you afford to wait? If you can afford to wait, you're going to be waiting a while. This situation is not gonna fix itself overnight, as we didn't get here overnight. And you can expect this situation to be ongoing for the next 24 to 36 months. So if you have a car, you probably are going to be in that car for a while. I'm gonna put this on record. I do not recommend refinancing. I think refinancing is a complete waste of time because you're starting the loan over for the same car. If that's the case, you're better off trading the car in and refinancing that way, because at least you get a different car with probably nicer features. It just does not make sense to me to refinance car. Some have found benefit into it, and that's okay. I personally do not believe in refinancing. If you can, look at your overall loan and look at how you can afford to pay it off in a significantly faster time. Unfortunately, the way that a lot of these loans are set up, people stretch the amount to the max, and they more than likely will not be able to pay these loans off in a faster time. Before I wrap up, please feel free to leave a comment below. Let me know what you think, what you're planning on doing, and how you plan to proceed, because I need all of the understanding of how we can navigate this together. And so with that being said, please feel free to look at some of my other videos, because they do help explain in more detail about how we got here and what you can do. With that being said, please, please, please be careful out there. Do your due diligence. Look at what you need to know, because baby, we about to get the ship rocked. So with that being said, until the next video, I will see you guys later.